Hi there guys, I hope you are having a good day. Grab yourself a cup of tea and let's talk some boxing. Now, I'm wondering about Anthony Joshua versus Oleksandr Usyk, and what I'm interested to see is what approach does Usyk take to this fight. Will he be similar as before, or will we see a different kind of Oleksandr Usyk? Because this is the heavyweight division after all, and it's not the same down at cruiserweight. So things will be different. He's up against a taller opponent, someone who is heavier as well, and punches a lot harder, fast, and can move extremely well, good positioning as well, unified heavyweight champ. So this is undoubtedly going to be the toughest fight for Oleksandr Usyk in his career, and it's not going to be an easy fight for Anthony Joshua either, but I do believe Usyk is looking at different avenues, and maybe a different game plan to use against Anthony Joshua, and perhaps we saw glimpses of it in the Chisora fight because he was fighting Chisora's way, although perhaps he just wanted to put on a display and maybe stop Derek Chisora to send a statement to Anthony Joshua because he knew that that was going to be his next fight. Of course, there was talk of undisputed, but I don't think Usyk ever really believed that that was going to happen. If you look at his interviews and what he said in the build-up to possibly Fury AJ, he just seemed like he thought he was going to be fighting Anthony Joshua all along, although he was ordered to face Joe Joyce in the meantime. Didn't really seem like he thought that that was going to happen. So that being said, he has spent a long time preparing for AJ. Most of this year, in fact all of this year, probably ever since he stepped in the ring with Derek Chisora, he was probably looking at Anthony Joshua and different things he could do. Now, I've said this before, I believe that Anthony Joshua has made the right choice by going on September 25th, giving himself a good 12-week camp because, like I said previously, Usyk has been preparing for Anthony Joshua since he beat Derek Chisora. Even before that, he knew eventually he would be facing AJ, so he has been preparing since his move to heavyweight, whereas Anthony Joshua has had Andy Ruiz, he's had Kubrat Pulev, so there have been different styles for AJ to face and different opponents to focus all of his energy on. Those opponents also focusing solely on Anthony Joshua because he is the champion. He's the guy they have to beat to become world champion. So essentially they are spending a lot of time studying AJ, whereas AJ has 12 weeks to study his opponent. It's a bit different for a challenger, so it is very difficult for AJ to stay up there as heavyweight champion because these challengers are looking at him and ways they could beat him. Now, with that being said, there is one time when Anthony Joshua has been beaten in the ring in the professional ranks. That was against Andy Ruiz Jr. Now, of course, there was only 4 or 5 weeks for AJ to prepare for Andy Ruiz. It was the same for Ruiz as well, but AJ found it difficult to find sparring partners. He wasn't really interested in fighting Ruiz. He wanted to be fighting Jarrell Miller. And he became a little bit disillusioned with the fact that he was chasing Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder, but they didn't really show much interest in fighting him. At that time, specifically Deontay Wilder, who announced he was going to be fighting Luis Ortiz on Ruiz-Joshua fight week, but then didn't actually fight him until November, and didn't really announce that he had made the fight until much later on. It was almost like he sent that message to AJ, no matter what happens against Ruiz, you're still not going to be fighting me. So you can imagine how that would get in AJ's head a bit, and probably plays a factor in him taking the decision to move to September 25th instead of just trying to get Usyk out of the way. Kind of like he did with Andy Ruiz. He didn't try to get him out of the way, but there could have been ways to move the event to later in June or July back in 2019, but that being said, that is done and gone. The interesting thing is that is his only defeat, and perhaps some fighters do look at that and take inspiration to think that, okay, they can do that to Anthony Joshua. If Ruiz can do it, then they can do it. Now, not every fighter has the same style as Ruiz, so therefore they cannot exploit any weakness in Anthony Joshua that Ruiz went looking for. So with Ruiz, it was about getting close, making it tough for Anthony Joshua to land clean, but also working down to the body. Ruiz done that extremely well in the first fight, and Joshua done extremely well to keep him away behind that jab, backing him up and stinging him with a hard right hand anytime he got too brave, because if Ruiz could handle the power like he was believed to be able to, he would have just walked through Anthony Joshua's punches. AJ did not stop him, no, but he had the power to hurt him. Otherwise, as I said, Ruiz would have just walked through his power punches and stopped him again. And that didn't happen, so clearly Anthony Joshua punched hard enough to cause him problems. I mean, we saw what happened in that first round of the second fight, when Ruiz was set back on his heels, and obviously the cut was caused as well. And let's not forget also in the first fight, Anthony Joshua dropped him first, and Ruiz came back. He gambled. He decided to get close to AJ. It was an opportunity because AJ started swinging, and he was able to come under those punches and get up close. That was where he wanted to be working, and AJ gave him that opportunity. Now, considering that, can we expect other opponents to try that against Anthony Joshua? Well, Kubrat Pulev didn't necessarily, but that's not his kind of fighting style. He cannot fight a certain way for however long he's been boxing. I mean, he's been a professional for a long time. He cannot then change it completely and go and fight, say how Ruiz does. I mean, Bob Arum was saying if Ruiz can beat Anthony Joshua, then Pulev's better, and therefore Pulev can beat him because Pulev punches harder and he's a better fighter than Ruiz. That is what Bob Arum said, but you can see how styles make fights, because Anthony Joshua didn't really have any problems with Kubrat Pulev. He controlled him, he hurt him, he backed him up, and he stopped him. He outboxed him as well in between there, because obviously he got the drop in the third round, but then got back behind his boxing for a few rounds and wore Kubrat Pulev down. That is the thing also, people talk about Anthony Joshua's endurance, but he was the one who was able to break Kubrat Pulev down, and I think that it is important for him to be around at 17 stone. That is a good weight for Anthony Joshua. He seems to be able to do the full 12 rounds and not really get tired. I mean, when he's a bit heavier, he often struggles and he needs to get that second wind. But around 17 stone, he did get tired in the Pulev fight, but look at the amount of punches he threw in that third round. But quickly, he was able to get back behind his boxing and he was able to get that second wind very, very quickly. I mean, anyone is going to be tired after the amount of punches that he threw in that third round. Another thing as well is this new kind of cautious Anthony Joshua. Well, he wasn't cautious in that third round against Pulev, but nevertheless, it was educated. So there is a fighter who looked at what Ruiz done, tried to do it, but came unstuck. He didn't try and fight the same way as Ruiz, but he believed that he could hurt Anthony Joshua and he saw weaknesses there that he could exploit. But he was unable to do so on fight night. Now, the interesting thing about Oleksandr Usyk is we did see him looking to put on a little bit more size. I know that maybe he is moving up to heavyweight, filling out into the weight, not having to make weight anymore. And maybe you can't read too much into him being around at 230 as opposed to weighing in against Chisora at around 217. So he has clearly put on some size, but maybe we cannot look too much into that. I mean, Oleksandr Usyk is smart enough to know that he's not the bigger man and he never is going to be. So there is no use in him trying to bulk up and get to a weight where he's similar to Anthony Joshua, where he's on a level playing field when it comes to that, because I don't think that that will benefit him. And he probably doesn't believe that either. He's not the biggest puncher, he knows that. His durability is pretty good. We haven't seen him in too much trouble in the pro game. A few times here and there, he didn't like getting hit off Tony Bellew, and in the amateur ranks he was actually dropped with a body shot, so maybe that is something that Anthony Joshua can explore. That being said, putting on weight isn't going to help his punch power, his punch resistance all that much. Slightly, but not a lot. So I don't think he's necessarily bulking up to try and get bigger for Anthony Joshua to close that gap. Perhaps he is just filling out in the heavyweight division and enjoying the fact that he no longer has to make weight. I do think though that Anthony Joshua will look to start fast and establish a foothold early on in the contest, not allowing Oleksandr Usyk to get into his rhythm, because Usyk isn't a hugely fast starter. So if AJ can break up his work early on, then he won't let Usyk find his rhythm, because he does fight in a rhythm, and that is something that AJ will probably look to disrupt. But on the other hand, Usyk won't want to be getting caught by clean punches from Anthony Joshua, which he did in the Tony Bellew fight, and he did also at times in there with Derek Chisora. He's a good mover, he has good positioning, but he does get hit, and he isn't going to want to be on the end of those punches from AJ. If he's going to try and box him at range, AJ will pick him off. This is not a fight where I think we can expect Oleksandr Usyk to go on the back foot. No, I think he will look to stay closer to AJ. He can box off the back foot, but I don't think that that will be beneficial, allowing Anthony Joshua to establish the distance and dictate the pace the fight is being fought at, because if he is going to go on the back foot, then he is relying on Anthony Joshua to close him down. I believe AJ might be comfortable in that situation, establishing long-range boxing and landing power shots. AJ is in his element when doing that. And again, that would be the opposite of what Andy Ruiz Jr. done in the first fight and what he tried to do in the second one. Are we going to believe that Oleksandr Usyk will look at the Ruiz loss from Anthony Joshua and think that he can exploit those same weaknesses, or will he try something completely different? To be honest, I don't actually think that Oleksandr Usyk will be looking too much into the Ruiz loss, because I think that that is the wrong approach. I think that Kubrat Pulev made the wrong approach in looking at that, although it was his promoter who was doing a lot of the talking about Ruiz and comparing him to Pulev. But Pulev did talk about it, and having his promoter go on about it, I would imagine that that got into his head as well. With Oleksandr Usyk, he's experienced enough not to look at AJ on a bad night, but to look at him on a good night. That is the right thing to do. It was interesting because Tyson Fury, when he was going to be fighting Vladimir Klitschko, he said that he was looking at the best Klitschko, the best performances, the Klitschko now, whereas he explained when David Haye was fighting Klitschko, he was looking at the Corey Sanders fight, the Lemon Brewster fight, and the Ross Purity fight, the losses that Klitschko had early in his career when he was throwing combinations, and he wasn't as safety first as he was going in there with Tyson Fury. So Tyson Fury understood that Vladimir Klitschko was a different fighter in with him compared to 10 years ago. David Haye did not get that because he was talking about those losses Klitschko had suffered. Tyson Fury didn't really play on that too much. He was looking at the best Klitschko he's seen over the past couple of years. I believe that experience has taught Usyk to do something similar. Anyway, guys, what are your thoughts on this? Make sure you leave your thoughts in the comments below. Also leave a like and grab that subscribe button. Thanks, guys.